Amit म्हणजेच दीपाली.
Well, somebody can get that mic muted, which is still on conversation. So we have had a popular thing, Shweta, your mic is on. So
Sorry, sir. Sorry.
Something happening like that. Okay. So let me give you a brief background of myself. It's important for this particular discussion. I started my education in a municipal school. Then, from age of 10, I was in a Gurukul style school called Netaraj School. We are teacher Ranchi. So I had to live in ashram. From there, I went to IIT Kharagpur. From there to Delhi University, and then to University of California, Berkeley, where also I did my research. When I came back to India right after my PhD, I worked in National Labs. Unfortunately, too much disturbance.
आदित्य 6, अभिजित घडगे 6, रम्या 10, मनोसर 5, अविनाश 8, भाग्येश पाटील 1, निखिल लांडगे 11.
I don't know why it is coming.
Harish, can you please mute everyone and then only unmute Professor Prabhat?
सर हम देख रहे हैं. आई थिंक ये जो नॉइस है अटेंडीज में से कहीं आ रही है. वी आर लुकिंग फॉर इट. ये हमारे स्पीकर्स में से नहीं आ रही है. आई थिंक अटेंडीज में से आ रही है. वी आर लुकिंग फॉर इट सर. आई वुड रिक्वेस्ट ऑल द अटेंडीज टू प्लीज कीप योरसेल्फ ऑन म्यूट.
प्लीज सिलेक्ट इंस्टीट्यूट.
हरीश जी अटेंडेंसी को अनम्यूट कर दीजिए ना प्लीज.
हाँ, MIT एडिट यूनिवर्सिटी. आला. केली. कॅम्पेन डॅशबोर्ड आला ना.
Let me try. It's quite disturbing. Okay, so I was in National Labs in US and India till 2002 working on nuclear fusion, and then in 2002 I moved to a university set up by Reliance Group in Gandhinagar in 2001. Dhirubhai Ambani Information and Communication Technology. And from there I moved to Delhi to head India's technology think tank. And for the last 3 years, I've been Vice Chancellor of the founder Vice Chancellor of this particular university. So I'm going to share my experiences both as a student and as well as a faculty and researcher across these institutions. The good thing was that I've never studied same place twice. That means for 2 degrees I have not studied the same place. I've had change of countries, and that has meant that I've had wider exposure to culture, research culture, education environment.
पहिला कॉलम 52 दाखवतो. ग्लॅडवॉल 25.
Sorry, this disturbance is not going away, unfortunately. So, in the first thing I will talk about is that when I was in my school, ashram, Gurukul style school, Netaraj school, we used to live in ashram and all the work we used to do by hand. So we used to, whether cleaning toilets, cleaning dishes, cleaning floors, that was an important part of our learning. The dignity of labor is a very important part. It's a socio-cultural aspect that we cannot ignore in the country. Today, from childhood, we train children not to work with hands. We ask them to study. And I'm sure that Arvind will agree with me that working with hand, giving value to working with hand is very, very important. When we go to US, we do all the work ourselves. We come back to India, we think working with hand is dirty. So I have a social movement, I call it 1-in-1. Please encourage children that at least 1 hour in 1 week they should work with hand and do things which we consider dirty. Okay. So that's an important learning that I had from that school. IIT Kharagpur, many things were there, even in 70s that I joined 76. With open book exams, the different kind of exams that were there. That was a very important learning for all of us at IIT Kharagpur. Today we are talking open book exam, but we have faced these things there itself. Delhi University was a different kind of model, hard-scale education system, but as a Physics department, we had professors who were willing to change things. Sometimes we have classes in the canteen. It was not important that you always have a fixed kind of settings, and you could also take courses across disciplines. Berkeley, of course, was a very good experience. Even in terms of examination, we have to have take-home exams. So, for example, you will be given a set of question papers you can take home in 1 week, you can return it back, or there could be other modes of assessment. So it was not one way of assessing. When I came back to India, of course, I was involved with research labs, and I was a project leader of the nuclear fusion reactor. A thing that helped me, and I think Tawari also mentioned about this, working on real problems. So although my research work was all based on computer, at that time we had access to the fastest computers of the world in US during my. When I came to India, there was no computer. I joined Science Institute of Calcutta, Science of Nuclear Physics, Calcutta. There was no computer. Only computer I had was the personal computer that I brought. So getting the computers to be set up, and those of course were not as powerful as what we had in US. But the whole thing was that in addition to modeling, I realized that simply modeling is not going to solve problems. So I must make sure that whatever is required to solve the problems related to nuclear fusion, I had to do, whether it was experiment, data control system, anything that had to be done, I had to learn and do it. And that was very useful. So around age of 30, 1991, and so I could actually get the reactor in Calcutta. That was the first reactor, nuclear fusion reactor in the country, working. And then I moved to Gandhinagar, and there also a reactor, nuclear fusion reactor that was set up in 89, was not working. And again, I had to get into many details. I cannot go into that. Those are interested can look into my blogs. And some of these problems will not come from textbook. And fortunately, in 5 days, I could actually get that reactor to work. And I was also project leader of that reactor. And another reactor that was being set up, a superconducting tokamak, as we call it. I was also project data acquisition, control and operation group. Each of these, what we found was that what your textbook knowledge was there, what we were taught as a physics student, was of course important. But you have to learn from different disciplines, and many of them I've learned from rural experiences. For a major problem I solved when I saw how hand pumps were installed in my village. And from there I learned how to solve a major problem that was affecting 80% of the discharge. So there's a lot of learning that we need to do by observing things around it. It's not simply textbook learning that's very important. Then, again, I'm not going to any details, time is short. In Gandhinagar, when Dhirubhai Ambani Institute of Information Communication Technology was set up in 2001, I was involved from very early stage, and full-time I joined in 2002 summer. Many experiments we did. One of them was not having any departments at all. There was no department system, so it was department-less, which meant that I, coming from a physics background, could actually develop courses which are related to the computer networks or embedded system or sensor network. And very quickly, we could actually become world-renowned in the kind of work we're doing because we are focusing on real problems, as Professor Tawari mentioned. For example, I was working on India's moon mission. I was working on solving wildlife problems, wildlife tracking issues. And also, very importantly, I got involved with helping people with severe disability. And that was something that has given the maximum pleasure. I'm involved where I could see that the work I'm doing could change life of a person within a few hours. And this was all, so I did not put any label on myself that I was PhD in physics. I had to learn from any source that was possible. And thanks to internet today, the role of teacher has changed and the role of the students has also changed. The students no longer have to depend on teachers for learning. And so the teacher's role is no longer sales on the stage, it is guide on the side. It's not that you stand on a high pedestal and give lectures to us, and that's the only thing that students will be learning. So this we have to realize in our education system. In Delhi, when I was there, we developed this particular document that I would like to flash, Technology Vision 2035. Technology Vision 2035. The same institute, TIFAC, was headed by Dr. Kalam from 93 to 2001. In 1996, Technology Vision 2020 was made. And I was fortunate when I was heading the institute, TIFAC, from 2013 to 2018. And this particular document, Technology Vision 2035, was developed during my tenure. During my tenure, Dr. Anil Kakotkar was chairman of our governing board. This document was prepared by us, along with a large number of more than 200 experts all across the country. It's a set of 13 documents, a main vision document, and then 12 documents in different sectors. And I had put education right on the top. So in fact, there's a little booklet that we have included in the document, And if you see in that, I have put education right on the top. That was because I felt that education is the key to success of the country. And we actually prepared a document. It was launched. In fact, it was launched in Pune itself. And what happened was that this document, as Dr. Arvind was discussing about economic manufacturing capability of the country, I very much agree with him. In fact, it's not only 1820, but you go from first AD onward, first AD to 1800, India and China were in the top two. And mostly it was India which was, on the upper side as compared to China. And as he rightly pointed out, that as we became colony from 1800 to 1850, it dropped to almost 2% of global manufacturing. In spite of independence, we have not come out of that thing. We are improving a little bit slowly, as he said that maybe by 2050, we should be doing much better. But when we're preparing this document, in fact, I have a blog that I've referred the audience to, which I'm talking about how India is losing huge amount of wealth. And that is because when the industrial revolution was taking place in Europe, raw material was going to Europe, it was being processed there, and the value-added product was coming back to India. And this is the thing that is going on even now. We are still losing a lot of money. We worked on a particular product called guar gum. Guar beans are very popular in Rajasthan and also Maharashtra to some extent, guar. And we're losing about 50,000 crores rupees per year just because we don't do value addition of guar gum, which is the powder that we make out. This is used in shell oil and gas production in US. And actually, we don't do value addition. We don't do the chemical processing that is required to do that. I'm not going to that, but you're interested, you can look. So a lot of raw material is going out of the country. This is our industrialization 1.0, which actually did this. And Dr. Siddharth was mentioning about IP, and also Dr. Sitaram actually was mentioning about this. I would like to say that why India was better earlier was because of IP was not there. It was distributed manufacturing. So distributed manufacturing, then it went to centralized manufacturing in the industrial revolution 1.0, as we call it now. And still we have been continuing, but now distributed manufacturing is again coming back. And no, I don't think both of you touched on that. Distributed manufacturing is to key to India's success, and that is where we need to focus. And today the technology is coming in, the role of IP is going to become less and less actually. Because once you have distributed manufacturing, no single person can control something. So now we need to focus on that part. So this particular document, as Dr. Arvind was mentioning, have not talked about, we are not about GDP here. We have not talked about money, we have not about rich and poor. We don't talk about India becoming a 40 or 50 trillion economy by 2050. What we discussed in this document was quality of life of Indian citizens. When I talk about Technology Vision 2020, Dr. Kalam, it is his last breath. I met him in 2013 when I joined TIFAC, and we had a very interesting discussion. 2015 was the last I heard of him. He talked about developed India. That was what we had talked about till his last breath. I heard him in fact, I think probably it was SOCHM convention only in Delhi 2015. And afterwards, unfortunately, we had to go and pay our last respect to him when we lost him. But this particular document moved from developed India to developing quality of life of Indian citizens. We don't talk about money. We don't talk about other countries. We only talk about Indians, their quality of life. It does not matter where we are, whether we're here, we are in the sea. Each person's quality of life is important. How do we meet the quality of life requirement? That is what we are discussing in this particular document. So although it says Technology Vision 2035, I would have liked to call it India Vision 2035. It's a vision for the country and its citizens. And then, of course, the technology has a role to that. So we have discussed technology into that. We have also identified many grand challenges. I'm not going to that, but I'm happy to tell you that many of the grand challenges that we have put in this has already been taken up at the highest level. Also, the national scheme on anemia, Bharat, Nutrition India, and many other things that we mentioned has been taken up. Now, let's coming back to higher education. So, all this background helped me. I was also part of AICT's one committee perspective plan committee to bring new technology areas, emerging technology area into India technical education. And I was a member of that in 2017. We had discussion on this. There was a committee report of that. And 2018, following that, I happened to be the founder vice chancellor of this particular university. Being a founder vice chancellor, you have both the opportunity as well as challenge. But you are trying to set up everything from ground. We had the campus, but the university was new. We had to start from scratch. But I took the challenge, and what we had to do was to actually create a new system which challenged the existing system. As was mentioned, that either you don't take risks, you say that I will follow what is being done. And one of the popular things we do is that we want stamps of various organizations, so AICTE, NBA, UGC, XYZ, stamps of industry, stamps of government agencies. And we show that this is my credibility, that this institution or that institution or this industry has given me a stamp. Okay? This is what we do. But actually we need to focus on the curriculum, the system. Can we do that? Our parents of the students or the students are not very easy to convince. They like to see the building, a glittering building. They like to big names. So how do you change that? Regulatory bodies, as been mentioned, till recently was only to make you conform to their system. If you change from that little bit, they will say, no, we don't approve this. And everybody wants approval. The stamp is important, license. So I had to take that challenge, and thanks to my management. What we did was to actually design a computer science engineering curriculum in 2019. We launched. 2018 we started planning for that. I got some time for that, fortunately. I opened up my discussion to social media on LinkedIn, to Facebook. I was surprised to see more than 50,000 views on what we planned and hundreds of comments from all over the world. To use that, it didn't cost me anything. It didn't need any effort, but all that input came into before we finalized the program. I told AICTE I don't require your approval. Of course, not in that way. It was a more friendly way. But I said that I'm going to share what we have planned to do. If you like something of it, you can use it. Otherwise, fine, not a problem. As a university, I would like to use my freedom to create a new curriculum. And I was surprised when AICTE actually sent me an appreciation letter saying that this program is very good and how it's going to help. This was very surprising to me because normally government institutions do not think that anybody else outside what they're thinking is good. Fortunately, AICTE changed. They sent me an appreciation letter about this program and formed a committee to revamp computer science, revamp technical education, bringing new emerging technology areas, as well as to revive the computer science curriculum of the country, and I was a member of that. An interesting thing that happened was the discussion that happened and follow-up things. In 2020, at least 5 to 6 new courses were started by AICTE, which changed completely the country's curriculum of the computer science engineering and related areas. So we had not thought from that point of view, but took a bold step that we wanted to create something new, which we felt was important, and it has spread all across the country, including my campus and hundreds of campuses across the country. Few more things I would like to mention. In fact, on that pattern only, then 2020 we started new programs like BTech Bioengineering, MBA Digital Business, our design. All of these are on what we call multi-track system. I'm not going to go into details of those. But a few points I'd like to mention. One was that all of these have first 2 years are common courses, and last 2 years are the specialization track that students can choose. They don't have to make this choice at the time of admission. What we have done in this, for example, if I look at computer science, we start with Python as the programming language because that is choice of artificial intelligence today that is driving computer science. Second semester, we brought design thinking course. This was also mentioned by some of the previous speakers, but also a fabrication lab where students are being exposed to 3D printers, laser engagements, CNC machine, all of this, they have to work with all of these. And it's not only computer science students, it is design students, it is bioengineering students, all of them have to do this. And actually, I'm happy to also tell you that AICTE picked up this and the similar concept of Idea Lab, which I'm actually chairing the National Steering Committee of AICTE to set up Idea Labs across the country to make sure that students can work with hand. And we are setting up, I think, planning to set up 250 we have finalized. Shortly, we are going to announce that. And this is to make sure that students can work with hand. One more concept that we have brought in, which is very important, and Arvind will agree with me, is that one of the reasons why India grew fast in the IT sector was access to computers at the home of people and the internet. But actually, when you come to hardware, you don't have that access. Going to lab is difficult. You don't have access to lab all the time. So I brought in a concept, I call it lab in the back concept. That means, can you have lab in your bag? So just like you have laptop and mobile phone and internet, can you carry a lab with you? So there's a particular product, and there are other products, also similar products, national instruments that are used, which you, it's like a smartphone device of that same size, you connect to USB port, and all the instruments that you have in electronics lab or embedded system like oscilloscope, function generator, logic analyzer, input output, analog input port, digital input, all of that is available to you right on your computer wherever you want. You can work in home, you can work outside, you can work in your class. This is the lab in the back concept. And we are doing the same thing in our formal labs also. So we are not saying to a student that you will do something here and you will do something else in home. You exactly have the same thing in your lab and same thing with you. So you think that you have access to a full thing. This is a big game changer, because I feel that once the students have access to this, today all the students have access to Arduino, Raspberry Pi, and so on. All of this, they have access from school days. But this lab facility is becoming very important, and I feel that is going to be combined with the dignity of labor, going to be very important. We also actually bring in technology commercialization entrepreneurship that Dr. Siddharth will very appreciate in third semester itself, to make sure that they can set up companies right in the first 2 years of their education. Few other things that we have done is that internships are very important part. In Gandhinagar, we started at a set of 3 internships. First one was focused on rural internship. I have modified that a little bit. It's the rural, societal, and small industry problem. The idea is that students will observe problems. Otherwise, today you ask the students to work on project, they do a Google search. They don't see problems around them, in their family, in society. So how to observe problems? That is the first one, just to observe the problem. The second one, after second year, is the industrial internship, where you use a known knowledge to solve an industry problem. And third one is a research internship, where you develop new technology or new applications or new knowledge. That's part of research internship. These are the 3 sequences of internships that are there. One more thing we have done is that we have set up a school of interdisciplinary studies and research. And there all the PhD programs are part of interdisciplinary studies and research, so that no barriers come. So as was being mentioned about interdisciplinary, multidisciplinary, transdisciplinary, superdisciplinary, whatever superdisciplinary, actually you break these barriers of discipline. Research today does not see any barriers from any discipline, because otherwise you get stuck in a particular discipline, you will not be able to research. So we have done that. One more interesting thing that we have done, and it follows what Dr. Siddharth mentioned. When we looked at industry academia collaboration, we always talk about industry helping academia. I always say that actually it's the academia which should be taking the upper hand, not the industry. It should be first done in academia. Industry should follow later on. As Arvindji will say that US, this is what exactly happens. The initial work is done in the academia, later on the industry takes it up on larger scale. So actually, in India, what is happening, the center of excellence, maximum of them, are actually used to train the students in their technology so that they are useful when they join that particular industry. They're already familiar tools. The industry does not have to, train them in that particular tool. What we said that no, that is not the right thing. Can industry set up a research center in the university where industry employs people? Industry employees are there along with faculty and students of the university to participate in that. But at least the industry investing in cutting edge technology areas. And this means that actually you can work at low cost in the industry environments, looking at the initial stage of problem, and then maybe out of 10 problems, only 2 are interesting. That industry can take up its own or with the help of faculty members. As time is short, I would just like to mention that I was not expecting this to happen. But as the COVID era, not only it brought a lot of loss of family, friends, and all of our destruction, but also the fact that the way we are connected today has also made us globally connected. So today, place, time, date is not a matter. So in the last few months, we have been able to start research projects of the highest level. I'm come from nuclear fusion. In last October or November, we got a request from Silicon Valley innovator investor, Dr. Akash Singh, wanted to start a nuclear fusion program. He requested me to start. For the first time in the country, nuclear fusion program outside the national lab we have taken in this country. And I'm happy to announce that I'm mentoring that particular program. We hire people hired by the industry, which are working in our campus. Of course, right now due to COVID, we had to send them back home. And worldwide, actually, there's a lot of development happening in nuclear fusion, where private industry has come in a big way. And actually, one of the problems that I'm going to face is policy issues of the country. In the US and the UK, it's already private industry being supported, being discussed. Similarly, we are working on solving chronic health problems. I'm also mentoring that program again, funding coming from US. We're also working on a reversible UNG project to solve global warming, again, in collaboration with a few of the US inventors. We're also looking at helping farmers in US and India through space technology. Again, request came from US. So these are problems, not small problems, but large problems of global importance. And fortunately, all of this started where industry is setting up research center in our campus. It is not center of excellence in the usual sense that we use. I think I will stop at this point, but thank you to SHM and for PERA for giving this opportunity. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, sir, for